Chapter 16. The Call to Kingston. The hum of distant wind through the mountain passes echoed like a whispering heartbeat, a pulse of the ancient land. Candice swept her gaze across the towering slopes of the Watcher as the early morning mist clung to the rock faces and dense jungles below. Her tribe, the Nithari, had called this region home for centuries, rooted as firmly as the mountain itself. The land stretched endlessly around her, its thick, leafy canopy broken only by narrow veins of rivers snaking through the forested valleys. On a clear day, when the air was crisp and the east wind blew just right, one could glimpse the distant glint of the sea on the horizon, a silver band between jungle and sky. But her eyes rested, as always, on the Watcher, the solitary peak that rose like a guardian above the lush terrain. Its jagged cliffs and slopes were harsh and unyielding, yet rich with life to those who understood its secrets. Above the tree line, the mountain lay bare, exposed to the elements. The Nithari believed this was the mountain's spirit laid open, a place where only the most determined dared to venture. Midway up, in a small, secluded cave, lived Ceylan, her mentor, a man who seemed as much a part of the mountain as the stones themselves. Candice moved with agile confidence up the winding, narrow paths, leaping over a narrow chasm as her steps pressed lightly against the gravelly stone. She was tall and slender, her skin a warm, earthy tone, with long, dark hair pulled back in a loose braid. Her eyes, an intense amber, held the quiet resilience of her people. She wore light, fitted leather armor in muted forest tones, designed to blend seamlessly into her surroundings. Draped over her shoulders was a rough, woven cloak bearing the dark greens and browns of the jungle, pinned with a brooch in the shape of a mountain hawk, the emblem of the Nithari warriors. Her journey up the mountain was one she'd taken countless times, but her mind already danced between the possible reasons for Ceylan's recent urgency. She was long used to his eccentricity. The cave where he lived held no comforts, no bed, no fire, no visible food beyond an occasional apple or handful of berries. Yet he seemed to thrive here, as though he had somehow woven himself into the rhythms of the mountain. Still, for all the years she had known him, Ceylan had never ceased to surprise her. Today was no exception. She slipped inside the cave, where Ceylan sat cross-legged on a patch of stone, his eyes distant but focused, as if seeing something far away. He gave a slight nod of acknowledgement as she entered, and they shared a silent greeting. It was their usual way. No words until one of them broke the silence. "There was news in the village," she began quietly, breaking their custom. "An explosion in Kingston. People say it lit up the night sky with fire and strange light, then faded as quickly as it appeared. No one knows what happened, only that something demonic was left behind." At her words, Ceylan's expression shifted sharply, the color draining from his face. "An explosion?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Tell me, Candice, how many years has it been since the last arcane storm?" Candice stared at him, taken aback by the strange question. "It's the year of the wolf," she replied, uncertain. He shook his head, his brow furrowing. "Hybris's bursts of magic. The last one? When was it?" Candice, growing slightly annoyed by the old man's vagueness, but keeping her composure, shook her head. "I don't know what you're talking about, Ceylan," he exhaled, almost as if resigned to her answer. "Ah, I see. Since the time of the deported, then. How many years?" She hesitated, mildly frustrated, but answered carefully. "It's 1771, I think." Ceylan looked shaken, as though her response confirmed a dark suspicion. He pressed his hand to his forehead, his voice barely above a whisper. "Have you seen the Empire's shadow?" he murmured, more to himself than to her. Candice tilted her head, confusion shadowing her face. "What is? The Empire?" The old man looked at her, his gaze piercing through layers of unspoken understanding. "You don't know them? Not yet," he replied quietly. "But you will. The Empire is a force, an ancient, relentless power that neither you nor the villagers here have faced. But if that explosion was real, then they will come, sooner or later, seeking what they do not understand." She took a steadying breath, absorbing his words. "But why does this matter to us, Ceylan? What is it about Kingston?" He faltered, his gaze shifting back to her. "There were two others caught in that explosion, two whose presence I felt ripple through the mountainside as if it were my own pulse. These were no ordinary travelers, Candice. They are children of Hybris, bound to this world by forces they likely don't understand yet. If that demon was born of their presence, then even our homeland, even the Watcher itself, may not be safe. The weight of his words settled over her, and a sudden sense of purpose gripped her. You want me to go to Kingston? To find them? Ceylan nodded, his eyes full of that rare urgency she had only glimpsed once or twice before. Yes. Go and bring them back here. I cannot tell you exactly what you'll face, but know that these two, they are more than mere strangers. They may hold the key to protecting our worlds. She nodded, rising to her feet, feeling the familiar blend of resolve and trepidation. But, Ceylan, she said, sparing one last look at the sparse cave, how will I know them? I have no description, no clues. A faint smile crossed his lips, a rare echo of the man she was accustomed to. They will know you, he replied. When you see them, you'll feel it. Candice swallowed, the weight of the unknown settling in. She had trusted her mentor's guidance through many trials, but this journey would take her beyond familiar borders. A journey across Hybris was perilous enough, yet it paled against the task of finding two people veiled in secrecy. Just as she turned to go, Ceylan's voice broke through the silence, sharp with warning. Candice, he said, his gaze locking onto hers with fierce intensity. Bring back the children of Hybris. But listen well. Do not, under any circumstances, bring back the Empire's champion. The words sank like stones in her mind, dark and ominous. She understood the gravity in his voice, knowing that whatever he sensed must be a threat beyond their understanding. But loyalty and trust bound her to him, for this was the man who had saved her life, taught her the ways of the mountain, and shown her paths to strength and resilience she had never dreamed possible. He was not only her guide, but the closest thing she had to family, a bond that had solidified through years of hardship, through moments when he had stood between her and death itself. Without another word, she turned and began her descent, her heart thrumming with the task ahead. She would find these children of Hybris, even if it took her to the ends of the continent. The Watcher loomed above her, a silent witness to her resolve, as Candice set out with nothing but faith in Ceylan's strange but unwavering wisdom.